The reason for it must be some incredibly complicated, difficult to demystify underlying basis for some kind of pricing, scientific methodology, or it's because it sucks. The reason is that it sucks.
We're gonna be rich.
We just got done crawling through 450 GPU listings to try and understand how much of MSRP is still a lie. One of the biggest takeaways is that several models of the AMD RX 9070 XT have actually increased in price since launch, including evaporation of a lot of the original MSRP models. But also the average cost over MSRP for in-stock listings of GPUs is still elevated. RTX 5090s across Best Buy, Amazon, and Newegg are $1,054 more than baseline, or a 50% increase. The RTX 5080 is typically $570 more than MSRP, with the 9070 XT typically $275 over MSRP for the in-stock listings. But this chart isn't perfect because we're relying on in-stock listings, and those will bias towards more expensive cards. And that is why we made this chart. This shows the majority of current series graphics cards that don't have a single model in stock at MSRP, and when we have seen them restocked at retailers via tracking services, they've gone so fast we have to question how many are actually made. This chart shows the spread of cards by price, where we look at the minimum up to the maximum price for each model. But these aren't the only charts we made for this video. We made a lot of them. They look something like the ones we're flashing through the screen now. Taking a step back and looking at the GPU market, we thought this world could use some more absurdity in it. And so we took all of those things and then we put them into charts and pivot tables and all this other stuff, and we tried to make it make sense. Like scrying, except it's a spreadsheet instead of like a pool of water or a scry stone or something. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Antec Flux series of cases. We previously benchmarked and independently reviewed the Flux Pro case and found it to be one of the best cases we tested last year. The Flux Pro features the modern trend of wood accents while also focusing on a high airflow design. We found its performance to be among the best in our thermal testing. The case also has a number of ease of installation features to make assembly and cable management easier. Learn more at the link in the description below. Anyway, one of the things that we did was call a bunch of board partners and speak off record, including some system integrators, and I learned something that has been true for a couple of launches now, unfortunately, which is that a couple of them told us that they don't really intend to make that many MSRP cards because the margin isn't high enough. So they kind of ship it up out into the channel to satisfy the fact that it can technically exist and to make... I guess I'll use the... this feels a little gross to say, but one of the companies did literally refer to NVIDIA as, and I'm quoting here, this is a direct quote, as quote... it's... NVIDIA is my daddy, end quote. I want to be very clear, that is a quote from a company. Anyway, the context of the quote was they're trying to not piss them off. And helping to not piss them off is shipping at least something at MSRP to maintain the facade of it all. So anyway, that was one of the things that we did, was talk to some of these companies. A $2,000 MSRP for NVIDIA's 5090 doesn't mean anything if the cheapest 5090 in stock costs $900 more than the price that was given on stage. And 3 months ago from the AMD side, we were told by AMD that it was inaccurate to call the 9070 XT's $600 MSRP quote launch only pricing, even though right now it's even less available at $600 than it was at launch. Out of the 26 current listings, only one is priced at MSRP, and it's not even in stock. Additionally, 70% of the 9070 XT listings that have remained listed since launch have seen price increases, so even when they're higher, they aren't stable. Interestingly, but also predictably, given the NVIDIA to AMD market share disparity of 92% to 8%, GPU availability by count when totaled had NVIDIA plus partner models at nearly 50 total listings per model when we checked, with a total of 315 different SKUs listed on North American retailers. AMD had a total of 77 SKUs listed, with Intel at 28. They also launched fewer devices, but what's important is the SKUs per model. AMD was around 14 to 26, meaning NVIDIA options typically have almost 2 times as many devices as the high-end. That includes overclock cards, cards with 2 fans, 3 fans, 1 fan, card with fat heatsink, skinny heatsinks, RGB, white, black, waifu, devil, and so forth. This data was interesting but also predictable. It's one of those rich get richer scenarios where because NVIDIA is already successful, it gets more successful as a result of its existing success. It makes sense. The partners also make more money and sell more cards when they sell NVIDIA, and so there's reasons that they have more NVIDIA models. It's not some big weird conspiracy in this particular instance, it's just the nature of they sell more of those. It's 92% to 8% market share, as we just mentioned. But the point of all this is, for a user, especially who is less familiar with the current GPU market, if they land on a retailer like Newegg and they see 47 SKUs of RTX 5060, and then they encounter 17 of, say, 9060 XTs or something, the chances of them landing on a 9060 XT when knowing little about the market, it's a lot lower, just mathematically. So in all our reviews recently, we've kind of ended them by saying we need to revisit the pricing a little bit later to see how things stabilize. And that's what we're looking at now. Spoiler alert, not stable, but it's time to revisit it anyway. This is not conclusive. Pricing's constantly changing. International pricing is also constantly changing. And it gives us a starting point to better understand the GPU space just broadly. We're looking at data in a couple different ways. It makes it kind of fun. But again, just to be extremely clear with everyone, this is not fully conclusive because even in, say, the 1 week or so, maybe 10-day latency where it takes us to put all of it together, edit it, publish it, all that stuff, there's going to be a little bit of flux, but it should give us a good baseline. All right, so today we are analyzing the currently available video cards on the market, looking at the pricing, the availability of in-stock listings, the split in models for a given SKU, and we have a lot to go over, but we're going to start with some of the broadest findings. Using only in-stock first-party listings from Newegg, Amazon, and Best Buy, we found that across all current series GPUs, the average price for available cards was typically around 30% greater than MSRP and around $200 more. But that's averaging everything. GeoMean's also listed just to account for some of the differences in data sets, but the worst is the RTX 5090 at $1,054 over baseline. The so-called best, by percentage, is the 5060 Ti 8GB, which is awful, because it's a terrible GPU that shouldn't exist. And that's also why it's not as marked up. We think it's a scam designed for tricking pre-built buyers. Breaking into smaller segments, NVIDIA's and AMD's higher end, and Intel's battle-mage GPUs see average available prices 45 to 55% over MSRP. Mid-tier cards are experiencing a 20 to 30% increase over MSRP for their average prices. At the low end, increase over MSRP for each card's average price lowers to the 10 to 20% range. Now we're going to get more into it. This section defines some of our methodology. So today we are focusing primarily on GPUs with in-stock listings at the time we collected all the data. And the reason for that is just because we've observed that some cards, when they restock, the price changes. Could be up or down. We've seen a lot of them going up recently, and so it was the easiest to look at in-stock listings. And we did also collect out-of-stock listing information where it was available, and we put that together in some of the other charts. So our intention is to represent what's actually available in the new GPU market right now. And the hardest part of all of this has been that pricing and stock have changed day to day. By the time the video goes up, it's going to change again. But what we're looking for is a baseline. We'll start with current GPU pricing and availability before digging into more specific price increases like the 9070 XT and the partner models. And as an important note here too, we obviously don't have the actual unit count of any given listing from these retailers. So it's not, you can get the listings and how many listings there are. That doesn't tell us how many units fall into that bucket. And so one thing we can't know is when we look at the percent split between listings of a given price across the market, how many units are being sold at the lower versus the higher end. You can kind of take a guess based on logic, but you get the idea. So let's get into some of the data. This chart compares each GPU's average price for in-stock listings to its MSRP. The red segment represents the difference in dollar amount. Intel's B580 average in-stock price is $130 more than its given MSRP of $250, amounting to a $380 average price. However, oddly and unfortunately for specifically Intel, most of this comes from one partner. Gunner is regularly charging $380 to $430 for B580s via its Weiliao stores, despite other vendors selling the B580 at $300. This is a natural problem with having so few board vendors. Back to the chart, AMD's 9070 XT average in-stock price ends up $275 more than its $600 MSRP, resulting in an average price of $875. As expected, the average price over MSRP seems to increase with the class of cards, which explains why all the 8GB GPUs, especially those with alternative larger versions, sit towards the top of the chart, with the available models costing around $40 more than MSRP on average. NVIDIA's most egregious price increases come from its 5090 and 5080 GPUs, which we couldn't fit on this chart without skewing all the other results, so we made another one. Here they are, blowing out the scale of the chart at $1,054 and $570 over MSRP.
We're going to be rich.
For average price over MSRP by percent, the RTX 5080 now tops the chart, which isn't a good thing this time. with an average in-stock price 57% greater than its MSRP. Intel's Battle Mage cards follow closely, both around 51% over MSRP for the average prices of their available listings, despite having the two lowest MSRPs of any current series GPUs. For AMD, the largest percent increase comes from its 9070 XT and amounts to a 46% more expensive average price. As for the current availability of cards at MSRP, we have this chart. The RTX 5060 and 9060 XT 8GB hold the most in-stock listings for MSRP, with 8 and 6 listings. AMD's 9060 XT is actually the only non-NVIDIA current series GPU that has any model cards available at MSRP, with 6 of 8 listings in stock at the time of writing. The good news is that no one is buying it. The bad news is that it exists anyway. With 14 of the current 20, 4 NVIDIA GPUs compose 70% of the in-stock MSRP listings. While NVIDIA offers more total listings at MSRP, AMD generally allows a better ratio of listings at MSRP. For instance, NVIDIA's 5060 Ti 8GB has 5 of its total 42 listings, or 12%, priced at MSRP, while AMD's 9060 XT 8GB offers 8 of 20, or 40% of models listed at MSRP. The downside is that this is for the 8GB model, so while it's good that more are at MSRP, again, it shouldn't exist. That being said, those offerings may really only be a factor at launch. At this point, any listings that are priced at MSRP but out of stock don't really matter if we don't know if they'll ever be restocked again at the same price. And again, that's what some partners told us too. Some of them have no intention of maintaining good stock levels of the cheapest cards right now. Sadly, over half of the current series GPUs don't have any MSRP listings in stock. At the time of writing this, Intel doesn't have anything even listed at MSRP, in stock or not, across the 3 retailers we looked at. Here are the total counts with an important note. Again, this is listings, not units, so we don't know how many units there are in total. Based on the totals of SKUs at least, the RTX 5070 is the most available new GPU on the market right now, with 36 of 45 listings available, closely followed by the 5060 Ti 8GB and the 5060. AMD's most available GPU is its 9060 XT 8GB variant, with 18 of 20 listings in stock at the time of writing this. NVIDIA occupies almost the entire upper half of this chart, alongside AMD's 9060 XT 8GB. More in-stock cards that suck, like the 8GB 5060 Ti and 9060 XT, probably is a good indicator. Hopefully that indicator is that people aren't buying them, rather than there just being that many. This next chart focuses it only to percentage of in-stock listings. The same important note applies here, which is this is percentage of listings in stock, not the actual units in stock. Intel's B570 is the most available card by listing at 92% in stock listings, or 11 of 12, which isn't too far ahead of Intel's other Battle Mage GPU, holding 75% availability for the listing. For AMD and NVIDIA, the two most available cards based on percentage are the 8GB variants of both the 9060 XT and the 5060 Ti, sitting around 90 and 81% of listings in stock. On the low end, we saw nearly half the GPUs on the chart in a range between 40 and 50% listings available. The problem is that the listings which are unavailable, so the absent percentage here, are typically the MSRP units. During the AMD 9070 XT launch, AMD was clearly sensitive about credible claims that its launch price was suppressed by rebates and might be temporary. In response, AMD's Frank Azer released this statement to any press who asked, including us, saying, quote, "It is inaccurate that $550 and $600 MSRP is launch-only pricing. We expect cards to be available from multiple vendors at $550 or $600, excluding region-specific tariffs and/or taxes, based on the work we've done with our AIB partners, and more are coming. At the same time, AIBs have different premium configurations at higher price points, and those will also continue," end quote. Only 3 months later, and both the 9070 and the 9070 XT currently have 0 cards available at MSRP, despite having decent supply or higher up in the model hierarchy. At the time of writing this, the 9070 XT only has 1 of 26 listings priced at MSRP, and it's not in stock. Azer also previously stated this, quote, "Demand today for our new AMD Radeon cards has been phenomenal. We are working with our AIBs to replenish stock at our partners ASAP in the coming days and weeks. MSRP pricing, excluding region-specific tariffs and/or taxes, will continue to be encouraged beyond today, so don't despair," end quote. Conveniently, We just so happen to have a pricing spreadsheet that we compiled during the 9070XT's launch. At launch, Newegg and Best Buy had a combined 27 9070XT models listed, with 6 for MSRP. Out of the 21 listings that have remained since launch until now, 15, or 71% of them, have had their prices increase. Price has gone up for these. On top of that,